I think that's funny. I think that clip is funny. That's why I wanted to show it, because first of all, finally, the mainstream media is starting to talk about this. But I like how they're acting like they've been covering this. You know, he said, you know, this is something Joe Biden's been dealing with since 2014. Well, then why haven't you been covering it since 2014? And it's coming up again, the anchor says, because Joe Biden's running for president. No, it's coming up again because other Democratic candidates don't like Joe Biden.
Exactly. And they frame it as, once again, Republicans pounce because Trump thinks this is suspicious. Everybody thinks it's suspicious. It's very odd that Hunter Biden even went along with his father on these trips, these official trips representing the U.S. government. And then, as you mentioned, in China, he ends up after that trip with a sweetheart deal with basically the Bank of China. He creates a firm called Bohai Harvest. And he ends up getting, I think it was like $1.5 billion in funding by the Bank of China, which is owned by the communist government. And then the Ukraine trip that you mentioned, Burisma was the energy company in question. It was under investigation by the chief prosecutor in Ukraine. Joe Biden quickly says, hey, you have to fire this chief prosecutor who's investigating this firm that my son is now involved with. And if you look at Hunter Biden's experience, too, when he points out, well, I have experience in this field. His first job was working for David Boies, a legendary Democratic lawyer, hard partisan, and he worked for his law firm. After that, he was on the board of Amtrak, another favorite of Joe Biden. So it seems like every kind of profit that he's made in his life comes off recognition with his father.
Right. Well, and then there's that. So first of all, that's what I would call soft corruption. There's a reason why politicians like Joe Biden, who are supposedly only paid like $250,000, if that, every year in their government positions are, you know, multi-millionaires, mega wealthy people. It's this kind of corruption. It's because their families, their children, or their spouses can be paid for work or positions that just happen to get them closer access to the candidate itself without it being concretely known, so that it's not officially corruption. The other part of this, and this is what bothers me the most, more than even business corruption, is the correlation these types of interests have to the policy positions of the candidate. This is what I mean. When Joe Biden went to China, he was there to talk about trade issues, and he was there to talk about national security issues. He was there to talk about the South China Sea. But after he got back, after his son Hunter signed this $1.5 billion private equity deal with a company tied to the Chinese Communist Party that you mentioned, all of a sudden Joe Biden's policy positions on China got very weak. He softened his positions to the point that on the campaign trail, this was less than a month ago, he says, do we really think China's a threat to us? That kind of correlation between his interest and his policy, I think, is very, not only shady, it's dangerous.